You ready to start?
Rob, are you ready to start? Yep. You're ready to go.
Folks hear me this morning? Good morning, Facilities and Infrastructure Committee. June 16th. Beautiful Thursday morning. Changes to the agenda this morning. We have a request to move up the discussion with Holt Engineers about the space study for downtown. And I wonder if anybody has any objection doing that. We have guests this morning with us. All right, we'll move that up. Let's do that right after my report, which is pretty short. Slow too. Is there any public comment this morning?
I have not received any.
Amanda, was that a hand? Okay. I brought a clipping in this morning out of the Cortland Standard from Saturday about Dryden's efforts on the Freeze Road Bridge. It's not going ahead very quickly for Dryden. They've run into some more problems because of the issue with the quote unquote historic bridge. And I guess we'll have to wait and see. I handed out to Randy and Lisa this morning. I put copies in Amanda's and Ann's box at the legislature. So you may want to take a look at that. Seems like that saga will go on for a long time. That's the only other thing I would mention is that the restoration of the Glen Norris historic map has been completed by the Westlake Conservators, which the county hired to do that work. And I see Arel, do you know whether that's whether Adam's been able to bring that back yet?
No, I know. Do you know if they paid the invoice?
I'm sorry?
Do you know if they paid the invoice? I think that's what
He was supposed to bring it to ask for a check to be cut, and then he said he sent me an email saying he would go up and pick it up.
Yeah. So I don't know if it's finance or admin's office. Check that's what they have.
I don't know where the original check came from. Must have been cut from, maybe Lisa knows. Out of contingent.
So, yeah, Alan is ready to do that. I'll check with him to see whether.
Great.
Check. I know that he did ask, or someone asked about placement.
Oh, the county historian wondered whether it should go back at the bottom of the stairs where it was, or whether we should find a different location for it. And we haven't responded yet. I thought we'd wait till we got it up here and then we take a look at it. Make some kind of decision. Yeah. Well, you probably should come where there's a microphone. Why don't all you folks come up here so we can get you the microphones. I'm sorry, Errol.
So I will have Alan within the next 2 weeks and go up and retrieve it.
Thank you. Errol, do you want to introduce folks from Holt and
Okay, yeah, so.
give us an introduction to where we are?
Great. So I appreciate you moving this up on the agenda. We wanted to first introduce Holt Architects that is doing the space program update. They've done several space studies for this project over the last, I think it's been 6 years. We started, the large one was when we were looking at the old library site and we did a business case study. Graham Gillespie was at the time the principal in charge. And so I know that, Mike, you remember him, and Lisa, most likely when we did the project of Human Services Annex. That project was very involved as far as the space program. We did a lot of other things in that study. And so the information that was gathered then, we'd approached many departments, most of which are included in this update, some which were not at the time. And so that was the basis for this update that Holt has been working on over the past couple of weeks. And so in this study, both representatives here from Holt will give you an update on that. But Cindy Kaufman is an associate principal with Holt, has been involved in several county projects, notably the Human Services Annex Project, Office for the Aging, and then some involvement in this project, the legislature relocation. Craig Thompson, more recent as far as my interaction, is the principal in charge, correct?
I'm the new Graham.
Oh, the new Graham. Graham may be on remotely, or at least on the phone. So in any case, I will turn over the presentation to them. We've worked together on the just the brief 3 slides we have for this, and we basically wanted to give you an idea of what we've been working on and the team composition on Holt's side.
I would just mention, I can see Amanda right now with the screen sharing, but I can't see Ann. So Ann, if you need a question or something, please speak up. Go ahead.
Okay, so it's nice to see many of you either on video or here, and thank you for the opportunity for us to give you an update. Arel, I think, introduced the team on the project. We have been in the process of interviewing 19 departments to update their space study needs. We've been asking all kinds of questions related to their space needs, how they see their future growth potentially or not. What are some unique considerations to the departments? And it's been really it was a great 3 days. On June 8th, 9th, and 10th, Arel and I sat in the room with all of these department heads, and we gathered a lot of information. So now we are in the process of updating an Excel file that is including the updates to the programs. And I'm going to share a milestone schedule that will give you an idea of what we hope to have to you in 1 month from now. I think we are expected to make a presentation to the F&I committee in July. So starting the week of May 23rd, we had a kickoff
Can that
meeting.
be enlarged at all?
Yeah, let me give that a try. Is that better?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so on May 23rd, we had a kickoff meeting with all the department heads, and we explained the process of how we were going to gather updated information. We exchanged the space data information with the departments in preparation of the department meeting. So by the time we met with them, we already had a lot of feedback from the departments, which was really helpful. It allowed us to just confirm space needs and then move into talking about some other types of unique considerations that they might have. So we had the meetings, and now we're in the week of June 13th, and that's here now. We're updating the space program. We are creating individual department pages that are 8.5 by 11 that will eventually go into a report for you, but it also can be used in presentation format, which will have each department's space program on the left, and on the right will be listing unique considerations such as department adjacencies that are preferable, issues like, are there security needs? How many people are waiting? Can they share certain spaces in a future building, such as conference rooms or break rooms? So we're just learning a lot about all the departments. And it's funny because I was involved in the 2018 study, and things have changed a little bit. So in fact, they've changed quite a bit. So I really think that this study is so important now. So here we are today, meeting with the F&I committee, just introducing, what we've been working on. Arel and I are going to be reviewing my most current space data as a result of the meetings with the departments tomorrow. I think that we're just going to go department by department and make sure both of us have the same understanding, because as we were gathering a lot of information, he might have gleaned something different than I did. So we're going to put our heads together and make sure that it feels correct. And then I'll be sending them back out to the department heads and have them review it one more time. So there's absolutely nothing that we have missed or misunderstood. On June 22nd, Quay and I will be meeting with Arel and Lisa to discuss our findings from the space program study. And we anticipate on 7/21 that we will be presenting to you the final study. And that will include what our process was, an overall site map showing the locations of the departments in Tompkins County, summary of building amenities outside the department, a summary page of all the department's square footage requirements and a total. And then, as I mentioned before, the department pages that will be sort of this major takeaway for each of the departments. And then we'll have, if there was to be a center of government building, what is the overall square footage requirements for that? And what are other unique considerations that might be necessary?
I'll just add for people in the meeting that might not be sort of familiar with the process and what a space plan is. A space plan is basically sort of a preliminary definition of what the building will be. It includes all of the functional space requirements and the square footage requirements that begin to define what would be designed when you move into the next phase of starting a design process. And what was really interesting here was we had a well-defined building in 2018 and a very clear space study. And then re-meeting with those departments post-COVID and after 4 years of growth, we understand all of the modification and growth and development that's happened in that period of time, which sort of gives us another moment in time. But what it really does in terms of the project moving forward is it lets us see what 4 years has been and gives us a perspective and a much better idea how we design a building that will accommodate, Tompkins County government for the next 20, 50 years, because we're not only looking at this moment, we not only looked at 18, but we can start to, not that we can project what happened in 4 years will continue to happen, but it also gave all the departments the understanding that we can't just design a building for this moment, but like change is inevitable. And, we've started conversations even about, like accommodating growth through the possibility of, do we want to be accommodating remote work in the future? So all those conversations sort of play into like, how do we right size the building and really define a building that, has to work day one when people move in, but it also has to serve the county, for the next 50 years. We're not going to build a structure that isn't a 50-year structure and, needs to be flexible to accommodate more change than we've seen in the last 4 years. So it's really set up these departments for an understanding of change, having gone through the process twice.
Okay, are we ready to start questions or?
Yeah.
All
yeah.
right. Questions from the committee? I'll start it off. We have a campus here with several buildings that we own. And when we originally looked at a center of government building back at the old library site, that didn't go forward because frankly, we couldn't afford it back then. And we kind of sent out feelers to the city as to whether they wanted to join us there, and they didn't. But what I'm wondering is, are you focused on simply building a center of government building, or are you focusing also on using some of our existing buildings and maybe building a smaller building for some additional office space and for bringing more of the outlying offices into the center here? Are you looking at parking? And are we considering this? I'm glad to hear you're talking about 50 years. That's always been my feeling about any government project like this. It ought to be good for 50 years, but it can't always happen. So I just kind of wonder a little bit more about this campus idea. We have a wonderful historic area with the main courthouse and the old jail, which is the Governor Tompkins building. We have and the Governor Tompkins building. And I think it would be quite a change if we tried to build one great big building and then said we're going to sell off the old jail, for example. I really would have to be convinced on something like that. So maybe you could comment on some of those things. I have responsibility. You go first.
Okay, well, I know that in previous studies that we've done, we wanted to create a campus feel for this block. And some of you may remember Holt had a sub-consultant, Trowbridge and Wolf, a landscape consultant, do basically a site layout with integrating, really creating this campus feel for this block with this building, the old jail, and the main courthouse, and a new building on this block. They had pavers, they had landscaping. I really liked it. And it would be nice at some point to present that, or we can distribute that again to this committee because of the various new members. We, in this process, have had the same question about the old jail in previous studies. The legislature at that time had decided to hold on to the old jail. There are reasons to do that because the building is tethered to this building and the main courthouse, with the heating and cooling plant for this building is at the old jail. We have tunnels going to both buildings that serve the buildings. We have natural gas that feeds the main courthouse, and we both have natural gas and electric that feed this building from the old jail. So it would be difficult to sell the building. We'd have to spend a lot to untether it. And then it would kind of get rid of kind of that campus feel that we've been trying to create. And also through the study, I know it's a little preliminary, but we've talked to some departments where it would be a little challenging for both to occupy the same building. And you'll know more as we present the report within the next month. And so, I mean, that's a question that we would have. I think there are opportunities to use the existing old jail, You may remember about 4 or 5 years ago, I had a project that was going to make improvements to the old jail. And we were underway. We had done a space study with all the departments there. We were moving forward to make those improvements. And then it was put on hold because then we were considering the 400 block for a center of government. So there were plans that underway that we could dust off, but I think there are opportunities where we can use that either for county departments or possibly county agencies. So I think my recommendation, as I said, this is very preliminary, would be to hold on to the old jail. But I think that we are considering not every department in a new center of government. I think there are opportunities to have certain departments in the old jail.
And if I could add to what Arel has said, I think that the current campus as it is so beautiful in its scale and its historic nature. And I think that a center of government should not be a monster, next to these beautiful buildings. And I feel that, I feel that there's such a beautiful scale and context. It feels so comfortable for people as you're moving through the buildings. But what I think that we're learning, and I think probably everybody recognizes that there are some adjacencies and services that are especially public facing that might be able to share, a central lobby and a welcoming presence, and the idea that the public who are coming to see these departments have this one-stop shop for the most part that would make wayfinding a lot easier. We would be considering, of course, accessibility, parking. We haven't studied numbers as part of this study, Mike, but we can do that. And I do think that it is definitely a benefit to the county to keep this campus because it's so valuable from an experiential level. But this idea of one building that has many of the programs that makes it easy for our residents, I think would really be add value to the community. So that's kind of how I'm seeing it.
This study that we're in the process of is primarily focused on if there were a center of government building, what would it look like and what would the requirements of the building be? But I think what you're referring to, Mike, is a really like sort of forward thinking question. It's sort of more a development master plan because any creation of new space is going to create a domino effect. And I think that it might be important to think about, and that there's already there is some started thinking about like what the utilization of that domino of the existing buildings relative to that domino effect looks like. Because what we don't want to do is spend all this money on a new building, have all these empty buildings, and then what do we do with them? But part of that development master plan would look at things like deferred critical maintenance on those buildings and energy costs to operate those buildings. And we might learn very quickly that like the payback on a new building, and as opposed to the investment that would be made not in historic buildings that are significant to the community and to the government, but other buildings that might not have any historic or significant value. Like, does it make sense to take them offline and rebuild at a location rather than reinvent? But I think the study that we're focused on right now is sort of looking at at if there was a center of government building, what would the requirements for it be? The domino effect of that project is something that should be understood before we move forward with the project, I would assume.
Right. And Koreman.
Thank you for telling us, where you are and starting out, with 3 days of work at least that you've, I know that was just what you spent at meeting with staff and departments. And I know there's a lot of other work that is entailed with this. So thank you for that. So some of, I concur with, looking at a new center of government that would encompass a lot of our departments, keeping the old the pieces of our campus, the historic campus. I do really like the idea of like wayfinding. There's a lot of times people in the community, if I say, oh, there's this available at the county, where is that building and what department is that? And I think this would help the community with transparency and accessibility, physical accessibility. Not all of our buildings are physically accessible to everybody in the community. So doing this would make things more physically accessible. I think shared conference rooms where applicable, break rooms, bathrooms, coordination between the departments, all things that would be, I think, encouraged and supported in a new building. And even if they're not all in the same building, if more departments were brought down to the main campus, I mean, these are some of the things that I've heard of from some of the departments over the past few years, that they can work together, the employees can know more. What some feedback that we've heard, and feel free to correct me, anybody else I know Lisa has, but one thing we found through the pandemic is that departments are working more together and getting to know each other more. And because they've had to deal with the pandemic and various aspects of that. So I think that's something that we didn't quite realize was so kind of people were in their own departments, in their own buildings, and they weren't, just really didn't know each other. And so I think this is to kind of build on that new relationships that we have, I think is going to be an asset going forward. And so I don't really have a question at this point, but a small request. If we could have the information, not just a couple of days ahead of time for the January 21st meeting, but a week ahead of time, so it can be included in the agenda. So it's with our packet and it's transparent to the community. So thank you.
Yes, and we were planning on providing it to you a few days in advance, but we can certainly provide it a week in advance. So
Excellent, thank you.
that's fine.
We're identifying a lot of those types of shared amenities, and which would be the value of a consolidated center of government building, even large print rooms that, many departments share for things like plotting, kitchenettes and break rooms, where right now there are a lot of independent spread out across, the city. In one location is not only efficient in terms of square footage and cost, but it's also facilitates collaboration and coordination between some of these departments, which many of them are pretty excited about.
Yeah, and conference rooms, of course, because there are several different conference room sizes that have been requested, and almost all of them can be shared. The departments are reporting to us. There are a few that are necessary within a department space.
Right, and I can share a few things since I sat in all the meetings with the 20 departments. That they went well. I must say that they were all very frugal as far as what they were asking for. One of the reasons I sit in those meetings is to kind of be that referee, because they wouldn't be the ones to say, well, do you really need that much space?
Or a hot tub.
Yeah. So I can say that. I've been through so many of these space studies, but really none of them really asked for more space than we felt that they needed. And actually, with a few of them, I said, well, I think you need more space for this, or these functions occur in your space, so we need to provide additional space for that. But I was very impressed with that, with the departments. And also, we didn't get any, I thought Jay from assessment in the past, he's joked around about having a putting green on the top, on the roof, because we talked in the past about a green roof. So he said it could be a putting green, but we didn't get those requests. We actually got really good requests that had to do more with kind of making it a healthy workplace, things such as, an area for not necessarily a gym, but to exercise, showers for those that either bike or walk during lunch hour, which we promote, wellness and the department. So those were all really great ideas. I think the majority wanted the opportunity to associate with other departments. I think the feeling is that most of them are type silos, and I think that's more because of the buildings they're in. If you really think this building, old jail, even main courthouse, building C, you have only one department per floor. This building project, we would not be able to do that. You'd have to have, multiple departments on the floor. And so I think they're looking forward to that. Whereas in these buildings, it's one department per floor. There's really not much interaction unless it's deliberate, like at the old jail. So I think sharing of break areas, conference rooms were things that they were pretty excited about. So I think I was really very pleased with how this process went and the good ideas that we obtained from departments as we had that
Got some more
discussion.
comments I'd like to get to, Ralph. Thank you for that. Randy's next, then Amanda.
Yes, thank you for sharing information and for gathering more. I'm probably one of the few legislators not excited about building a new building. I just think it's a big expense. So I'm looking forward to seeing the financial benefits and operational benefits of that to convince me otherwise. One of the questions I have, and I wonder if it's going to be in your report, are you going to show by department the increase or decrease of staff that they estimate? And also, is there a minimum square footage that you look at per employee? And if you could show that, what the minimum should be, but also what you think it should be, right, for the effects and for good operations and healthy environments. So that's it.
Yeah, so Arel has shared with us the Tompkins County space standards for spaces that are assigned to specific job functions. So, there's a square footage for an administrator level 1 or, a clerical position or a professional manager, and we're keeping to those square footages. So that is the standard. As far as increase or decrease since like 2018, let's say, to now, we were not going to include the before. We were just going to include what we've gathered now. We do have a program from 2018, and if that's something that you're interested in seeing or us somehow comparing those two numbers, we can take a look at that if we feel like it would bring value to the study.
Yeah, we have both the data from 18 and 22, and we could just add a little blurb at the end of each department, summary of growth or shrinkage.
Amanda.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for this update report. It's good to hear that departments were being frugal in what they're asking for, which clearly tells me that you did not talk to legislators who all probably want their own office. So did you could factor in, we're actually going to have probably 16 legislators, so we need 16 offices. No, just kidding. But thank you for this report. I just had one serious question. Did you include the DMV in this? And I know there's questions about if they would move.
Yes, we have studied the DMV for their spatial needs, and although it is not anticipated that they would move into the center of government building, it doesn't make sense for a lot of reasons. It's funny, they were like, oh, the mall would be a great place to be located, the space in the mall. So yeah.
Great. Thank you for your work on this.
We had a presentation from the IT department here a couple of meetings ago about how difficult it is for them to move, and they don't want to have to move more than once. And I'm assuming they're telling you the same thing there. So I'm going to be kind of interested to hear what you folks are going to say about that, whether it should be moved to another building, let's say the old jail or something downtown, or whether it ought to go to a different location. off campus. It's a pretty important thing. So that's in my mind.
They should absolutely only be moved once.
Yeah. Randy.
Just to touch base on what Mike talked about earlier on parking. Bringing more people here is going to require more parking, and it's pretty crowded back here now. But if you looked at also, we do on this parcel over here, that people parking at now, is that part of the space study to understand what parking needs, or with that?
It could be a beginning of the parking need study. So the study is identifying the needs per department. The study is not even necessarily making any decisions on who will and won't be in the building. But after we have the study and the data on the number of people, then a decision will be made on who goes in the building, and the study will inform the number of people in the building based on the departments that are selected, which would then lead to a study on parking, which would sort of need to solve the additional, parking load of the campus. Yep.
I mean, we did get comments from departments. Several had to do with public parking and access. There are many of the departments that we met with interact with the public quite a bit. And so those are questions that came from them, more so public access and parking. And so that we indicated that, we made notes of that, but that we weren't necessarily addressing it except just to capture those comments from the departments. Not that many asked about, employee parking. I think they all recognize that this space, this block doesn't have enough parking as it is for the existing departments here, let alone for those that we're bringing in. A few did ask about the 400 block, if that would be available. And we said at this point, we do not know that. That's the decision the legislature will make. Other departments like Fernando here promoted, less vehicles and biking to work. Cindy just bought an electric bicycle, I think last Friday. So the departments such as Fernando's talked about, bicycle shelters, like ones that we have that are covered. So those that do bike in, at least their bicycles are protected, and looking at opportunities for reducing the vehicles that are being brought into this campus. And other opportunities for ride sharing and such. So I think there's a balance of ideas that could be considered when we get to, that would be the next phase once we hire a consultant to do the design of this building.
And to add on to that, even the parking interface was discussed, because a lot of people mentioned that their clients don't like the Parkmobile app, and it's very difficult for them to figure that out. So how can we provide a really welcoming experience to the people who would be visiting? What kind of interface is that parking, I think, should eventually be looked at.
Hey, anything else? We got to get on to the rest of our agenda, but we certainly appreciate your presentation this morning. We look forward to the final report that you're going to give us.
I'll get that to you a week in advance of the meeting.
Terrific.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Aurel. We got something, I think we got something for you later on the agenda too. Lisa Holmes, County Administrator.
Morning, thank you. I only have a very brief update, and that's to say we are still in the midst of putting together the capital plan for 2023, together with the budget staff, Norma, Jane, Samantha Freilich, myself. We've met with all of the departments that have capital budget projects for 2023 and those who have projects ongoing in 2022. And what we're finding, of course, are projected increases in costs of materials related, and also costs related to supply chain issues, shortages, and delays. So two notable projects that are currently underway where we're seeing elevated costs over what was initially projected are the public safety building and our green building projects that are currently underway in 2022. So we're going to be working some more with Arel and the other individuals who are involved in those projects to come up with better cost estimates, and we'll probably be bringing them back through the legislature for to possibly request funds to complete these projects. When I'm talking about the green facilities, I'm talking about phase one that is currently underway. But we're working to refine those cost estimates, and we'll be sharing that information with you as soon as we have it. That's it for me.
Questions? Thank you, Lisa. Okay, airport's up next. Roxanne.
Good morning.
Well, good morning. What have you for us this morning? We have a resolution, I know.
Yep. So I have a great report. So we actually had our FAA inspection this week. Normally this inspection used to last 2 to 3 days, but we've had our third consecutive year with no discrepancies. Huge kudos out to the staff for this. They do a great job. The 2 FAA inspectors met with me after they completed it yesterday, and we're just amazed. Every year the paperwork's there, the records are there, the information's there, the airfield looks good, the training information, the ability of the staff to just do their job, do it well, is great. Where they love to come to our airport. They wish they could, state that about all airports. So I wanted to give a shout out and let you guys know, the airport staff's doing a great job with that. We're also in the midst of our annual TSA security inspection. That should be finished up by the end of this week, where a TSA inspector comes in, goes through everything. They do this monthly anyway. They check different things, but this is a full inspection of all of our records, of all of the processes. So that's going on so far, no issues, no concerns there. So things are looking good at the airport as far as what is happening. It's a busy month. We also have our emergency plan tabletop coming up next week. So it's fun times.
Did you say this is the third year in a row?
Third year in a row with 0 discrepancies. That means signage is great, markings are great, training records are all put together. Pavement looks good. There's many different facets that they look at. Those are just a few. The timing, for response from the crash fire rescue, they test that. Making sure that all the equipment's operational. They also look at everything, like even at our tenants, Teganic Aviation, they look and see, making sure that the fuel trucks, are up to spec and that they have all the signage. And so these are things that not only does Josh, but the regular operations staff, keep up on making sure that, they're looking at these things daily. And that's part of their requirements of, what they do daily, but just that they continue to do so and continue to do such a great job.
Well, certainly congratulations to you and Josh and all the folks up there that work hard on these kind of things. I was wondering, should we toot our own horn? Should we put out a press release on this that says, hey, third year in a row, FAA's come in and inspected our airport and found no major issues, that kind of thing?
Absolutely. I think that's a great idea. I was talking to Josh yesterday before he left. And I want to reach out to Dominic and our marketing staff and get something put together, because this isn't something that's normal. The 2 inspectors yesterday said, it's so unusual to find this where everything is just in order and together. And normally, this inspection, they came Tuesday night at 7 to inspect the night portion of it with the lights and all of that. And they were done by 3 yesterday. So, less than 12 hours of total inspection time. And, they've went through everything. They just said it's just great to see. So it makes me feel good, that the staff and the staff's proud. The staff work hard to do this.
And Koreman.
Thanks for the update, Roxanne. I just wanted to say, I'm sorry I didn't get up there. I was trying to attend the IAED meeting last Thursday. And so sorry I wasn't able to make it up there. I heard you were doing at least maybe a presentation, but you were going to be there. So sorry I missed it.
Yeah, missed you too. It was great. It was a good get together. A lot of individuals. The cafe did a great job with the catering. They're continuing to do an amazing job. They're actually paying us money, which, you know, is unusual for a cafe for what we've been through, you know. So this is that's looking up as well, but their customer service too is top notch. So that went really well.
Great.
Randy.
Yes, thank you. That's great work for everybody up there. One of the things that you talked about a few meetings ago was about activity and the number of passengers coming through and revenue. Could you just touch base on that a little bit? Or?
Sure. So we're still down, you know, from the pandemic. We're hoping, you know, we're working to increase our current flights with our current airlines. I'm meeting with the three of them, American, United, and Delta, as often as I can, just trying to get that ramped back up, as well as, you know, working hard to get a low-cost carrier in here. You know, we've talked to a few of them, continuing to work that, which will help with our employment numbers, which will help with our, you know, collections of PFCs, the passenger facility charges. But we're down. We had just about 53,000 passengers in 2021. We probably will be slightly higher in 2022 if things don't continue to pick up, which, you know, it's just a work in progress. It's just trying to get, you know, with the pilot shortages during the pandemic, a lot of the pilots that were working for the regional carriers, the larger aircraft, they were retired out. So like people working for American Airlines. So the pilots that are working for Piedmont that fly for American then moved up to American Airlines. So they're trying to get, you know, replace the pilots in the smaller regional companies that fly for the main line. So, you know, that's a work in progress, trying to get that to happen. It's just continuous, you know, trying to look for other sources of revenues for us at the airport, working towards that. But just trying to increase service. And I'm thinking, you know, business service may not return to what it was pre-pandemic. So that's another reason I'm thinking a low-cost carrier, families being able to take a vacation to Florida, just to, you know, to do something that's affordable for them. So that's another thing that I'm working, you know, extremely hard on as well.
Thank you.
Okay, we're ready to go on to the resolution and talk about that. Why don't we get it on the table? Resolution marketing and terminal advertising contract expansion at the Tompkins International Airport. Someone want to move that? Randy, seconded by Amanda. Want to talk to us about this one?
So this one, we're just looking for a 6-month extension to review, you know, the current proposals. We did go out for an RFP, so we have proposals. So we're reviewing them. We just needed some additional time to make sure that, you know, everything's in order, everything's reviewed before we move on with selecting a marketing firm for a long-term contract.
Questions? Ready to vote? Randy?
Yes.
Ann?
Yes.
Amanda?
Yes.
I vote yes.
Thank you.
Anything else this morning, Roxanne?
I have nothing, but again, any questions, anytime, reach out. And I have to just comment quickly on the department, you know, information that Arel presented and departments being close together and, you know, building relationships. We've had 2 departments, county departments, come up here for a tour. It's great. We love it. We get to meet people that we may talk to that, you know, there's a lot of new people in county government that we may not have met. So getting them to stop up to learn about the airport, I think is great. So I think that's a huge factor and something that we'd like to continue to do. So if anybody has any of that ideas, let me know.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Fernando de Aragon's with us this morning, and we have the Ithaca Tompkins County Transportation Council. Do you want to bring us up to date?
Morning.
Good morning.
Yes.
Couple of things happening in our field. As you know, the Congress passed the building infrastructure law, the bipartisan infrastructure law, they call it bill, which includes many, let me take this off, includes many funding lines that are on the way of grants that we'll continue to monitor to see which of those we can take advantage of in the county. That's very much an active thing happening on a week-to-week basis as they release guidelines and such. In addition, funding came through a bit delayed this year for our regular 5-year program of projects. This is a program that we call the Transportation Improvement Program, the TIP. We have created we finally got allocations and have created a draft TIP. We did a call for projects, DOT, New York State DOT, Tompkins County, the city of Ithaca, all have projects included in the draft Transportation Improvement Program. The program is currently out for public comment. We have a 30-day comment period that we're currently in. The program is available online and at the Transportation Council's website. We've been sort of advertising and putting it out there for the public. This year's program, just a point of curiosity, it's actually small in number of projects. There's only 14 projects, where in the past we've had up to around 30. But we have very high cost projects in it. So the amount of money in the program is not necessarily a lot smaller or different, but it's what we're seeing is that this type of project of repaving, bridge reconstruction and all has become more and more expensive. So we have less of them, but they're just more expensive. Where we rarely had, $5-10 million projects in our program, now we have one $10 million project, which is basically the repaving of Route 13 through the city, which is happening in a couple of years. And we have a bridge project from the city that kind of ballooned as they started seeing what the needs were. So it's just the dynamic that we're seeing that projects are getting more expensive, so we end up with less projects in the program. But we do, like I said, so that's our formula money, the stuff that we get on a regular basis. But we are now, like I said, keeping an eye out for other grant opportunities to try to bring monies from other federal sources as they become available.
Questions for Fernando? Randy?
Thank you, Fernando. How well do you feel that you're hearing from towns on needs that they may have? And how are they into the mix? I mean, a lot of the construction happens based on maybe county needs that we identify for bridges or whatever. One specific one that I've heard a lot about, and I've seen it, is Route 79 that goes right through Enfield, and it crosses Enfield Center Road and I think Halseyville on the other side. And I've seen people walking that, and there's no sidewalk. And I watched a lady with a dog yesterday. I thought she was going to get hit because there's no place to walk there. So she was way out the road. Big trucks go through there. So that's just one project. I know that Enfield has approached everybody I think they can think of. And I was just curious how things like that come to the forefront. So.
Well, I know that particular project, Enfield, you're right, has contacted DOT. They've contacted my office. Unfortunately, this type of project usually takes a fair amount of time to get developed and planned for and funded. So I always tell folks who I work with that, the trade-off is time. You may get money from the feds, but the trade-off is time. So the benefit is in planning. So if you have a robust planning process and you know what's coming down the pike, what roads need fixing, what bridges are going to need attention, then you can apply for the money in a timely manner and hopefully, kind of keep that flow of funding and going. I'm sure, I know that the need for that particular project in Enfield has been expressed, and I'm pretty sure the DOT is looking into it. It is a DOT road, Route 79, so they're sort of the jurisdiction that needs to take action to make something happen. But I appreciate the reminder, because I can always, one of the roles of mine, it's just kind of prod the bear, right? And just kind of keep them aware of the issues. We hold meetings, and that's a role that the council serves, is that we have monthly meetings. We're going to have one next week where DOT is at the table, and we invite all the municipalities to participate. And it's a place where we exchange ideas, we bring up needs, and of course we review programs and the work that staff is doing. But we have avenues to reach whoever's the involved party, with, if it's a county road or if it's a local road or state road, the players are at the table. I mean, that's probably the most important role of the Transportation Council, is bringing people together on a regular basis, face to face.
That makes sense. So do you think it would make sense for each town to kind of come forward with something in writing, to saying these are the areas we're focused on, we think we need help? Well, verbal is great, but I think they need to have a plan, right?
Well, we've had that type of call for projects, but also just as part of developing this program that ended up being 14 projects. We did the sort of planning evaluation, so we kind of compiled the wish list, right? Of projects, and we have it. Of course, the wish list is, much bigger than we can provide for, but it's good to have, and we just, we keep moving projects as we can. And this federal grants that are coming in are going to offer some opportunities. I know that Jeff is on the call, Jeff Smith, and I'll tell him right now that I have to give him a call, and I want to talk to him about this and what opportunities exist for the county. But we do invite all the municipalities to be at the table. Some are more active than others, but at this point we have pretty good participation. So a lot of people are engaged in the process.
I'm trying to get some clarity for myself and to prod them along a little bit.
Sure.
Okay, can we go on to the resolution? This is an amendment of the 2022 Tompkins County budget to reflect an amendment to the 2022-2023 FTA budget for the Ithaca Tompkins County Transportation Council, and authorization to implement the amendment. Can I get someone mover? I got Randy to move it and Ann to second it. Do you want to say anything about it?
Sure. So again, the federal monies were a little delayed this year with all the work done for the bipartisan infrastructure law, and the estimates from DOT on the amount of money that it's in the grant for the Transportation Council was low, fortunately. So once the appropriations were made and the real money, the actual funds became available, there was an increase in the funding available to Transportation Council, and that is of $6,898. So we're programming that into our budget. That's what this is about.
Questions? Shall we vote? Randy?
Yes.
Ann?
Yes.
Amanda?
Yes.
I vote yes.
Thank you.
Anything else, Fernando?
No, as always, I'm available if anybody has any concerns or if there's any interest in discussing any of these topics further.
That's great. We know you're always helpful. Thank you very much. All right, we've got Dwight Mengel next. Transportation planning. Dwight?
Hi.
Morning.
I'm going to give a very quick overview because I think that would be great importance. So normally, what we're doing are grants, federal and state transportation grants, and working very closely with TCAT, Gadabout. We do coordinated planning. We have meetings working with all of the mobility providers in the county on that. But one thing we do have is every 3 years we have a triennial review by the FTA, and we just received notice this week that they have scheduled our 3-week virtual review with us and sent us 30 pages of questions, which they're looking for answers by July 1st. So this is every three years. The FTA and consultants come in to very thoroughly evaluate our compliance with 25 program areas. And what's new this year is that their expectation is that the county, as the recipient of the federal funds, would be exercising and documenting a great amount of the oversight necessary for all of these 25 areas with Gadabout and TCAT. And this is a new requirement for us, and we're going to be learning what that means, and frankly the implications for staffing to do this. So in addition to the triennial, to grants, to our meetings, we also are we've been working on our FTA research project for Tompkins Mobility as a Service. I propose that in a future meeting, I come back and do a short presentation about that, but we are finding time and setting aside time, working with our local partners on this valuable project. And the last thing I want to bring up is we are planning for my retirement, and what that means 18 months from now. And so for June, I anticipate coming back with a resolution relating to the creation of some positions, which we will fund through the federal program. And I just want you to know that that is a very active topic of work, because it also really creates the opportunity to reorganize and rationalize record keeping and everything for a new team to take over from the work I've been doing for 42 years. So that is that, and I'm sure we will have more discussions about all of these topics in the future. I'd be happy to answer any questions that people have.
White, I can't imagine Tompkins County without Dwight Mengel.
Well, I have a very early picture of you, former Mr. Mayor, waiting to get on the first bus going to and from Dryden.
Tom Tran, and I remember it clearly.
Yep.
And Koreman.
Thank you. Dwight, thank you for doing a very long transition, into retirement. So I appreciate you, and there'll be lots of time to appreciate all the work you've done over the years. But thank you and I would expect nothing less, I guess, of the thought you've put into making sure that there's a nice transition at your department or at your agency. One, I don't know if it's really a question, but just a comment. I was contacted by somebody in the community. I guess there's a group of folks who are advocating for free fares for TCAT, and I know that's been talked about before. So I know that's not new to your radar, and they said they've had very positive feedback talking with the various members at TCAT and in the board. So I just wanted to mention that.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ann. Anyone else? Shall we go to your resolution?
Yes, please.
Authorization of New York State Department of Transportation, Mass Transportation Capital Project Agreement, Tompkins County and Tompkins Consolidated Area Transit, Inc., TCAT. Someone to move that? Amanda. Seconded by Ann. Anything more you want to say about this, Dwight?
Yes, this provides an opportunity for New York State to reimburse TCAT and the county for the state share of capital projects that have occurred in the recent past.
Sounds like something we want to do. Any questions? Ready to vote? Randy?
Yes.
Ann?
Yes.
Amanda?
Yes.
I'm a yes. You got it.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks for being here, Dwight. Well, let's see. We've already done the space study process update, so that's taken care of it. And we were going to talk about some cost options at the 400 block of Tioga Street. Arel
All
or
right.
Lisa, who's going to talk about this?
Yes, so let me share my screen and bring up table. All right. So at the last F&I committee meeting, committee members requested looking at some options for both properties on the 400 block, the Baker Dental Building and the Red House. So I created a table here that looks at each of them. And so I can go through each of the options with you, and then you can stop me at any time if you have any questions. And so I've organized it on the left is the options, and first would be the Baker Dental Building, what the cost would be for that option, Red House, and then any comments for each of those. So starting with the do nothing, can everyone see that, especially those remotely? Or would you like me to zoom a little bit?
I can see it fine.
Okay, all right. So the first one would be the do nothing, which is not exactly the do nothing, but it's basically if we were to continue to hold on to both properties, And the numbers for each of them, at the Baker, the 27,000, and the Red House, 20,000. Those are essentially costs for, as I show on the comment side, for utilities. We have to pay property insurance. We have sidewalk and stormwater assessment fees that the city bills us for. Minimal maintenance, groundskeeping, and snow removal operations. So that's what those numbers reflect. They do not reflect the costs that are kind of the liability costs by holding on to those properties, and those could include, allowing for further deterioration of either of the buildings. And one of them that I've noted before is the dental building. The roof on that for the first level is deteriorating and collapsing. And so if it were to collapse, then we would have to do something, either cover it, replace the roof, which is not my recommendation. The red building, we've received kind of complaints, would be the second bullet from neighbors about painting the building. And I indicated that we would, in order to do that, which I don't recommend, is we would have to do lead abatement and then paint the building. And also just trespassers, those that have broken into the building. So there's liability there if someone were to be injured in either of those buildings. So those costs are really hard to quantify, and I didn't want to do that. So really the numbers reflect only minimal maintenance and our current cost to maintain those buildings. And by minimal, I mean that, if we do walkthroughs of the buildings, if there's something broken, like a window, we would replace that. We had gutters and downspouts of the dental building earlier this winter that broke away from the building into a neighbor's property. We had to correct that. But aside from that, we're not maintaining anything beyond just to keep the building, weather tight and not, a nuisance to the neighbors. So that's the do nothing. Any questions on that one in particular? All right, the next one would be deconstruction, and that really pertains to the Baker Dental Building, and then asbestos abatement would be for the Red House. And so for the Baker Dental Building, that would be the cost, $150,000 would be to deconstruct the building. And by that, I mean that we would try to recycle and reuse as much as possible of materials in that building before we were to demolish it. And then we would infill the basement and then put asphalt topping on the in that portion of that footprint. It would entail some abatement of any hazardous materials as well, and that's all included in that number. The next column for the Red House of 49,000, I had sent an initial table. Well, the number that I had previously was really the number, but it did not reflect prevailing wage rates, nor did it include air monitoring that we would have to do. So the 49,000 is a number that we feel is, at least myself and the contractor, on the high side, but it's all dependent. You have to bring in the Department of Labor. They do, we would need a special variance to abate the basement, and they could determine that we would have to, because it's a dirt floor, there's been some deterioration of asbestos in the basement. They could ask us to abate all of the dirt, or just where there's obvious deterioration that's fallen on the ground. So that's on the high side, but you won't know until we submit for a special variance what they're going to require as far as abatement and cleaning of that basement space. So that's 49,000. The next line is for renovation. So that one was the one that took quite a bit of time and effort to do. And it's a big number. And the reason it includes both renovations for tenant space improvements. And so I had to make several assumptions there. Neither of the buildings is set up space-wise to accommodate, any departments right now. So we would have to, make improvements in the space as far as knocking down walls, replacing flooring, ceiling tiles, lighting, all of those types of things that the code improvements would not reflect. The code improvements would be to make both buildings code compliant as far as accessibility to the public. We're a public entity, so we have public that comes to our buildings, so we would have to provide things such as, well, neither of the buildings are accessible publicly. You have to step up at all the entrances at the Baker Dental Building, at the Red House, we're about 3 feet above grade. So there's no way that anyone, especially that's in a wheelchair, would be able to access the building. So we would have to provide ramps that more substantial at the Red House versus at the dental building. We would have to provide a wheelchair lift to get to any floor, upper floor, versus we can do an elevator. That's much, much more money. We'd have to provide handrails, grab bars, and there are no accessible bathrooms. I don't know if we walked through about a month and a half ago, if you remember, the bathrooms that are there are tiny. I mean, it's tiny even for us to use. It's probably, you know, three by 4 at that. So none of them are accessible bathrooms. So those costs include making it ADA accessible, putting in fire sprinklers in both buildings, which neither of them have, a fully addressable fire alarm system at both buildings, which neither of them have. We would have to make mechanical system improvements, and those are because the code requires that a public building has to have ventilation air. So those buildings do not. It's basically, it's recirculated. We would have to replace units at both buildings. There are 2 at the dental building that don't function. So we'd have to bring in outside air to heat or cool that air, just like we do in any other public building. That's a code requirement. And then the roof replacement at the dental building, we would have to replace. It's unsafe, so the code requires us to replace it if we're occupying it. So between code improvements and tenant space improvements, those are the numbers reflected. And it's almost twice as much to do the dental building as it is the Red House. And that's because of the size. The dental building is almost twice the size square footage as the Red House. The Red House for sprinkler and fire alarm has an attic and a basement, and so that's not occupied. So we would have to sprinkler those 2 spaces, whereas the dental building, although it has a basement, it's an occupied basement. So we would sprinkler and put fire alarm anyway, but it doesn't have an attic or an unused, unoccupied basement, which the Red House has. So those are the renovation costs for those 2 properties. And then the bottom one that I added after I sent everything is the assessed value for both properties that assessment provided us. And so for the dental building, it's $750,000, and for the Red House, $300,000. So those are the numbers as requested.
I think Jay Franklin is on also.
Okay, yes. So those numbers we got from Jay.
What's the square footage of the Baker Dental Building?
It's 11,029.
Microphone, Randy. Randy, use your microphone.
I'm sorry. I was trying to figure out what that is per square foot to upgrade it. I'm not doing the math in my head.
Oh,
Is that $200
yeah, I didn't do it for the overall, because what I did is I did
$200?
for each of the ADA or the code ones separately. And then I did kind of a cost per square foot for tenant improvements. But I didn't do a kind of what the aggregate cost per square foot. So, but yeah, you divide 11,026 into the 2,000,003. The Red House is 3,841 square feet.
Thanks.
Mhm.
Ann?
Thank you, Ralph, for doing this. So with the, this is really useful information for us to see. The, did you say the assessed value of the property for the Baker Dental Building, that includes the property, the rest of the property that's not carved out by the Red House? Is that true?
That would have to be a question for Jay.
Jay, are you with us?
Yep, here, sorry. Too many windows. Yeah, so what I did is I assumed the Sears Street land would be sold. The Red House would just have enough land to provide parking for it. And then the Baker building would have kind of the back land. So there'd be a little rectangle behind parking at the red building and the parking all the way up next to the Sears Street. If you can remember, there was a map that Graham had drawn up on what 3 units would look like on Sears Street, and then the kind of how we would break out 408 in one of those site iterations.
Okay, thank you.
Well, do we know what it would cost to deconstruct the red house?
No, that never came up. And so, no.
I asked that at the last committee meeting and there was no interest in exploring that at that time.
I think Amanda's next.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to say thank you for this. It definitely helps spell it out more clearly and the various options. So I appreciate you putting this together. I'm not exactly sure what our next step is, but I'm all for the deconstruction of the dental building and the asbestos abatement. That's going to be my vote.
Okay, let's see. I think, Ann, is that your hand still up or is that new?
I wanted to echo what Amanda had just said, and I agree. I'd like to figure out how to get us to that. You know, if we focus on one thing, I think that seems to be the next, to me, to be the next step of, and I would like to see how we can move forward on the deconstruction of that dental building.
Randy?
I agree with Amanda and Ann that we should move forward for deconstructing the dental building and doing the abatement for the red house. And I think Jay mentioned I also think we should sell the red house and with just the parking spaces in back of it and not selling any additional road frontage other than what's right in front of the red house. So we can keep that as a transportation or driveway for access for us. And they can get it right away or something if that's allowed by code. My other question I have is, have we actually sold the other lots on Sears Street? Has that happened or?
I can speak
Go
to
ahead,
that.
Lisa.
So it was early this year it was in December of 2021. The legislature passed a resolution stating there was no need or public purpose for that strip of land and the intention to sell it to INHS, excuse me, to sell it to INHS for the purpose of developing that land for affordable for sale housing. And the next step in the process was so both of those resolutions passed. And the next step in the process was that INHS was going to be going through the subdivision process with the city. And they are in that process now. And we are in touch with, our real estate attorney is in touch with their real estate attorney about drawing up the next steps in that.
Thank you.
Ann, did you want to get in again?
No, sorry, I didn't lower my hand there.
I think we need another one of our special meetings, maybe in July, and just come to some conclusion and whether we want to make a recommendation along the lines of what you folks are talking or what we want to do. I think that I think Randy has made some suggestions about if we were to sell the red house, what are some options? Could we keep the land under it, for example? Can we give them rights of way and maybe long-term lease on parking would be some other possibilities. I think those things should all be discussed. But we don't want to continue to have to spend a lot of money on these properties if we aren't going to use them. I would like to announce to the legislature at the next meeting that these issues for these two buildings are under consideration, and we would be grateful for comments from other legislators about it. Morel?
I mean, I had one comment on the abatement cost, that 49,000. If a private homeowner that were interested in purchasing were to do it themselves, they would pay a lot less than the county. We're required to pay prevailing wages. So if it were a private party, it would be probably, they'd save about 20,000 over what our cost is. So I'm just saying, I'm not a real estate, attorney or negotiating whether it's advantageous or not for us to do that. But the cost for us to do it is a lot higher than if a private party, even a homeowner, could probably do it themselves. But I just wanted to share that when we purchased the building, we didn't require that from the seller at the time. And this is only a portion of it. We did do a asbestos study of the entire building back probably 3 years ago, because initially, as you may remember, that was going to be incorporated into a center of government building. It was going to attach to it. So we know that there's asbestos throughout the upper floors, not as obvious and as deteriorated as it is in the basement. I mean, it's basically in the sheetrock, in the joint compounds. So we're not abating the entire red house. And so I just want to make that clear that this abatement is only the basement. The county would be paying more to have it done because we have to pay prevailing wage rates versus a private party. So that could all be negotiated as you try to sell the building.
I didn't see whose hand went up first. Amanda?
Thanks. Thanks for that information, Arel. That definitely changes things in my mind. I guess I'm not opposed to selling the red house, but I feel like that's maybe a separate issue. And maybe it makes sense for us to go ahead and at least 3 people here legislators have said that they would be interested in deconstruction of the dental building. So I guess I would propose that, we bring that back as a resolution at the next F&I meeting. That would give other legislators a chance to come and join in that conversation at the next F&I. Again, we have another half an hour here. I don't know that we need another special meeting, but
on our agenda.
Okay, well, and then maybe the red house is a further discussion, and maybe the bigger decision versus just the asbestos is, do we want to sell that building or keep it and use it? But I would propose sort of separating the two and dealing with the first one, which it sounds like there's support for. So, I mean, Mike, I would request that we bring that back as a resolution at our next meeting.
Okay. Ann?
Thanks. I second what Amanda said. I do believe that the deconstruction of the dental building, I don't see how that's predicated on what we do with any of the rest of the property there, whether it's the area we're currently using as a parking lot, adjacent to Sears Street. I don't see how that has anything, to do with whatever we decide to do with the red building. Again, I'm open to hearing what other people think, but I haven't heard anything that's saying we have to decide, the red building first or co-jointly. I mean, I don't see any rationale for doing that. We're putting ourselves at risk. The county, we're putting the community at risk, the neighbors at risk. There's a house, we didn't quite look at that, but if you walk down that street, there's a house very close to the dental building on the other side. So I concur, let's get a resolution going and look at deconstruction on that. I also second what Arel said regarding the asbestos abatement as a home inspector and a previous real estate, I was also a real estate professional before too, that there, you don't have to do the asbestos abatement. It would be very costly for us to do it compared to somebody else. So I would only look at that as negotiations if, if we're looking towards selling the property, look at that as Zarell said, we weren't required to. It's not required by New York State or codes. We don't know what somebody else would use the building for or what they would be doing with it. So I would say hold off on doing any remediation, the asbestos, and look at that if we're going to sell it or keep it. If we're going to sell it, I would say use that as negotiations, or that information as a negotiation factor. Thank you.
And I would just disagree with you as far as you say that it's putting the neighborhood at risk, the building being there at the present time. I don't think that's the case.
One more comment.
Randy?
Yes, I think that separating the two properties makes sense as far as how we act on them. I'm definitely for deconstructing the dental building. So I agree with Amanda that putting a resolution forward on that one makes sense. And after Arel's comment about the rest of the issues with the red house, that does seem to make sense to separate them out. I think that and not do the work ourselves. I personally have done that to a building, and I did it myself. So I understand there is a lot of value in doing it yourself, but it's a lot of labor as well. You still have to wear suits and respirators, all those things, but you can do it. The only comment I had is if we do sell the red house, what are we allowed to do? Meaning, do we have to leave so much land with it? Do we have to leave parking with it? Do we have to give them a driveway? I don't know if that's the case, but once we decide what to do with the red house, we need to understand what we're legally allowed to do. And I do think that the dental building is a definite liability for us. So.
Ann, you want in again? Okay. All right. Well, this has been very helpful, Arel. I thank you for that. And yes. Oh, Lisa, go ahead.
I was just going to say, Jay may be able to speak to your question about the sale of the red building and the parking, et cetera.
Yeah, the original plan was to have a shared driveway to access that parking in the back. The lot would probably be 70 feet deep from what my recollection is. But it would be pretty tight to that building. We would have one driveway in to access the parking for us, if that's what the ultimate need is, and then those spaces behind. Mike Lane did have an interesting comment on doing a ground lease on that and retaining ownership of that land. Doing something like that, we could probably get more creative with those boundaries. And I always look, Cornell does that frequently, and that's always seems like a opportunistic thing for us to review as well.
Thank you, Jay. Anything else on this? So I guess we're going to have a resolution next time authorizing deconstruction of the dental building. So who's going to put that together?
I can work on that together with Arel.
Thank you.
Mike?
Yes.
Yeah, and that just one last thought. Maybe the next step is to have, a more full conversation about the red house. We can talk about, the cost benefits of, what it would mean to keep it and renovate it for our own use or to sell it. And again, inviting other legislators who want to participate in that. And I mean, hopefully this committee could come to some sort of, recommendation, and then we can move that forward as well. I mean, seems somewhat straightforward, but I'm sure there'll be lots of different opinions.
I have no doubt about that. Okay, let's move on. Jeff was with us before. I was going to ask him if he wanted to speak, but I don't think he's on the call anymore. We said we would talk about the camera system today. And we were privileged last time that Arel brought us a very interesting presentation showing us in real time, the cameras at the various locations that the county has. And we had some concerns about particularly this building, as I recall. And so we said, let's talk a little bit more about that, particularly how the cameras are able to take pictures, I guess you would say, of the entrances from the outside. And Arel, do you want to say anything more about it to begin with, or do you like us to talk about it? What would you like?
Well, sure, I can say a little bit. Actually anticipating that this might be on the agenda, either at this meeting or subsequent, I had scheduled with the security vendor that we deal with to do a walk through this building. And we were all scheduled last Wednesday to do that. And then something came up at another building. And so we went to that building at 8 in the morning. And then I had to start the meetings with departments at 9. And so we didn't do that.
Forgive you.
Excuse me?
We forgive you.
Yeah. I mean, I hadn't told you I was doing that. I wanted to basically do some work up front. I'm scheduled to have that walkthrough next Thursday with Westfire. I've already looked at the property a few times and have ideas and want to discuss those with our vendor. Having cameras on the DeWitt entrance and the Court Street entrance. It would be, you would see anybody approaching in 180 view on both of them. And then an idea for the alley here for a camera there. We already have coverage on the west elevation from the camera that I showed you. That's actually,
yes,
you can't see, but the top corner of the old jail. And then cameras for the interior. I would have a camera at each lobby of the ground floor as you come into the building. And beyond that, I didn't do really, and I've expected if it did come up that legislators, this committee may have some suggestions within the chamber space. We could do that, put a camera or two in this space. But as I sit on the exterior, we would have coverage as well as each lobby into the building.
So are they going to give you cost projections for these kinds of things?
So they would walk through and look at the locations, either that I propose or that they may recommend, and then based on that, a camera type. And then they would give me a proposal for what that would cost to do.
You have money in your budget, or is that something we would need to?
I have money.
If we wanted to do that?
I have funding that I could use towards this.
Are there other blind spots that we have that we need to be thinking about cameras for?
In this building or in any
the
building?
Campus here.
No, I mean, as I've indicated before, we don't have our own cameras at the main courthouse. Were we to move forward with the center of government, then we will not have any county departments in that building. So I've held off, and as I have access to those cameras should we ever need them from the state. So that's something that I've thought about, but I would only pursue that if we decided not to remove either district attorney or county clerk from the main courthouse. And really the courts want this space, so I don't think that that's going to happen. But as I said, we have coverage. They're just not our own cameras. But if we need to get video footage, I can approach the state to do that. We have, excuse me, coverage from our cameras at the old jail that look at anybody going in through the employee entrance, as well as from the accessible entrance on the south side. We just don't have a camera on the front entrance, but the state does. Other than that, I think we're pretty good as far as coverage of this complex, except as I've indicated here, we don't have that alley. And we don't have the best of views for the court and the DeWitt entrance. But what I'm proposing would give you much better view. And we also, once we do that, we provide access to staff, mostly the supervisors or whoever the department head indicates, to view the cameras live. So they can have a little screen on their monitor that they could view that, as well as, the chair of the legislature, we can set that up on their computers. I think it's a good idea. And as you indicated at the last meeting, things have changed over the last few years, and we're getting a lot of similar requests from other departments.
Let's go to Ann, then Randy.
Thanks, Mike and Arel. So can you say again where you're going to get an estimate for installing cameras? And so the locations would be, you said the lobby. So you're saying, did you mean the lobby down in the back of the building, the front of the building?
Both. The main lobby, which is on the DeWitt entrance, as you come in to use the elevator, we would have full coverage, could see anybody coming in through the doors, either going to the elevators or up the steps, as well as the Court Street entrance. It really does not, it's not a public entrance anymore, but it's an entrance. And so we would place a camera there. That way we could see anyone coming into the planning side, as well as those coming up the steps, the north steps.
And also the chambers, you said.
Well, in this space, we can, I wanted to see first if that's what you had in mind, is camera in here. The cameras right now is only rolling while you have committee and legislature meetings. Beyond that, they're not active. I'm assuming there is interest in that, but I wanted really to get your input on that rather than making that assumption.
For me, there is interest in including that in the estimate, and then we could, talk with the rest of the legislature too. But for me, there is, in talking, with subsequently with law enforcement, since our last meeting, they said that it would be really helpful to be able to, if there was an incident, to be able to see, to go to the system that you already have set up in place to see if inside the chamber before they enter. I mean, in an emergency, they said they would enter anyway, but it would be really useful to see if there was an issue, and if there was one or more persons that they could see where they were, and because then they might use a different entrance or might have different protocol. And just to put this out there, since we've been talking about different buildings, do you cameras, do you have a sense of how many bicycles have been stolen from employees? I know just at the legislature, there was one stolen last year that was locked at the bike rack. Have there been more? Because I'm just wondering, do we need some type of increased security for the bikes?
I don't know that. Typically, those incident reports would go to county administration. I've not requested that type of statistics or data on that. I'm assuming there are other occasions where that's happened, but I don't have that data.
Okay, it's just something that, to put on our radar, I think, just for us to think about if we're looking at a center of government or increased security. I know in some cities, and by all accounts, we're headed this way with more increase of bicycle thefts that we might want to look at down the road, of some other more secure way for, at least for our employees, to secure their bikes, possibly inside a vestibule or a lobby or some type of area. I have a electric assist bike and there's no way I would
Right.
trust it out back. It'd be gone pretty quick.
And those are comments we actually heard when we were interviewing departments. Those that have electric bikes said the same thing, that they would want a sheltered bike shelter, but with good security, because it's a large investment and they want to make sure they don't disappear. So I agree.
Thank you.
Randy, did you have your hand?
I did. I just want to say I agree with Ann. That's it.
Okay. With respect to the camera inside chambers here, I really think we're going to need input from Kathy Covert and her staff on that before we make a decision on it. My initial reaction is it would make sense to have it, but it's also the working space of this department, and want to make sure that they're going to be okay with that.
Okay.
Can we just get an estimate though, Mike, while he's getting the estimate and decide later?
Of course.
I will do that. And we'll have them separated out, everything I've discussed, and then as an option, interior cameras in this chamber space.
Okay, well, thank you for the background on that, Arel, and the work that you're going to be doing for us. We appreciate that.
Thank you.
Anything else we need to bother Arel about this morning? Thank you. You spent a lot of time with us and we appreciate it.
Thank you.
As far as transportation is concerned, I think we've talked about that a lot. But I would just add that I think they're getting ready to do the Route 366 repaving in the town of Dryden. I see they've got big message signs up near the intersection with NYSEG, up that area. And so that is something that's sorely needed. If you haven't driven on 366 recently from 13 to Cornell, you'll see how bad the pavement is. And that's major entrance to Cornell University. So we want it to look good for our visitors that come in. And of course, that's a state highway. It's a state project. Meanwhile, in Varna, they are also working on water and sewer line upgrades that are happening there. Shall we go to take the minutes of May 19th? Anyone want to move those? Randy? Amanda? Discussion? Ready to vote on the minutes? Randy?
Yes.
Ann?
Yes.
Amanda?
Yes.
I'm a yes. We have a budget adjustment and transfer for information only. It's for the airport. Does anyone have any questions on that? Not a big deal. It's a $500 item. Okay. Anything else for the good of the order this morning? Lisa, anything else you need? We ready to adjourn? All right, we're adjourned. Thank you, Katrina.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.